Playoffs? Yes, that's right. Jim Mora, we're here talking about playoffs. Welcome to episode 190 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. We're here for our playoff preview show today. The regular season is come and gone. The playoffs are here, and boy, do we have quite a few things to talk about today. It's been a bit of a chaotic week in the CFL, to say the least, and we're here to break it all down on this episode of the podcast. Of course, this episode is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. I'm Ryan Coop, and I'm joined here this evening by a man who is a confirmed CFL podcast all-star. Yes, we double-checked the list a couple of times. The great Adam Stewart is here tonight. Adam, how are you doing?
Well, I'm glad at least somebody checked the list and before they sent it out here, at least in the CFL PN, we do it. I think you're saying about some new news in the CFL was a severe understatement. We've got a lot to go through tonight, and only two of us, unfortunately, Ryan.
Yeah, Trey a bit under the weather here tonight, so he's taking a night off, rightfully so, and we hope he feels better. But we're here to chat all the good things about this week in the CFL and the bad things, and we'll touch on the playoffs here this week as well. We'll start off here in just a moment. First of all, with another put on your detective hat. Last week was the mysterious case of the missing Grey Cup halftime show. This is the mysterious case of the fake CFL All-Star list. Yes, you can't make this one up. We'll also talk about how the Riders chose to clean one room of the house. We'll break down the round one games. We'll go positional matchups here for each of the games in the division semifinals. We'll make our CFL fantasy picks. We'll do our full playoff predictions powered by Betstamp. We'll also take your comments and questions in our live chat throughout the night as well, all made possible by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more by visiting GameTimeTV.ca or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Before we dive into the things here, we also wanted to take a moment to thank another of our sponsors for this episode of the podcast. That is Betstamp. There are so many different sports books out there. Each one offers you different prices on the same games. How do you ensure you're getting the best value? Well, Betstamp provides you the info at no additional cost. You simply pull up the game you're looking at in the Betstamp app, see the odds offered by all of the different sportsbook affiliates, and it helps you place the bet that will maximize the return for the pick you're making. If you find some odds you like, you can sign up and link your picks through the Betstamp bet link page directly to the site you place the bet on. And if you want extra insight before you place your wagers, check out the commission-free Betstamp Marketplace. You'll see bets there that others have placed, and through the verified bet tracking feature, you get the guarantee that the odds are legitimate. You can find our consensus CFL picks there every single week under the username CF Countdown Pod. Visit betstamp.app or download it from your local app store. Sign up with referral code CFC to start using Betstamp free today. Best of luck with your wagers, and remember, always bet responsibly. So, Adam, how's your week been? It's been a completely normal week, not chaotic at all in the CFL. How about for you?
Yeah, absolutely nothing really much going on. It's just nice, quiet week. It's been pretty casual, really. I mean, nothing really that stands out too big in the news or in any sort of thing or any way that way. So, been a pretty interesting week.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into it here, and we'll start off with the mysterious case of the fake CFL All-Star list. Last month or on Monday on the show, it was just Trey and I, Halloween episode. We went through all of our division award nominees, who we thought would make the list. Those came out a day or two ago. Yeah, we got some hits, we got some misses on there among the division award nominees. I think we were all kind of across the board there, but I think we could justify all of the picks made there. Then the CFL All-Star list comes out yesterday morning, and a lot of eyebrows are being raised when you look at this list and you see
Andrew Harris.
Yeah, Andrew Harris is an all-star running back despite only playing 8 games and having kind of an off season. No members of the league best offensive line from the Calgary Stampeders made the list. Donald Rutledge Jr. of the Bombers, who got demoted to the practice roster mid-season, made the list. The leading tackler in the CFL, and Darnell Sankey, did not make the list. There were a number of questionable picks that ended up on the award list this week. And then we get the news like 5 hours later that there was a tabulation error, according to the CFL, that I guess some of the weighting on the picks was incorrect. Oh, and here's the brand new All-Star list, by the way, which has, 19, 20 different changes from the original list made up in the morning. Like, we've talked about so many absurd things since we started podcasting together here, Adam, over the past, 5-6 months since you joined the team. I don't think we've ever talked about anything as absurd as this. Like, this one blew my mind. We had all of the talk about how the CFL, the outside chatter about the CFL, how it's Bush League. And yeah, a lot of times we can find ways to defend it, but I have no words to defend this. What do you make of CFL All-Star Gate?
No, this is just absolutely insane from the CFL. The first list had 16. So essentially it was the West Division versus the Toronto Argonauts, because the Argonauts had 16 nominees for All-Star on the list at first. I mean, the other one that I was laughing about, in special teams, the two guys nominated for Special Teams Player of the Year, Most Outstanding Special Team Player, was Mario Alford, and I think it was on the other side Chandler Worthy, if I'm not mistaken. Both of them didn't make the All-Star team. How? I mean, it was absolutely mind-boggling reading this list, and fans are getting more and more and more upset until all of a sudden somebody said, well, where's the list? It's pulled. Well, you don't just pull the list. It's all of a sudden there was a statement from the CFL. I believe Jeff Hamilton from maybe it was Winnipeg broke the news that the CFL has gone back to recount the votes. I mean, this isn't the U.S. election. This is the CFL. We've got to be better than that. This has been absolutely insane. What we've seen out of the CFL. There is no excuse for this at all if you're in the CFL headquarters. How do you not count your tallies 3, 4, 5, 6, 20 times? It don't matter how many times you count it. Make sure it's done right. This not only affects bragging rights, but it also affects salaries. I mean, you look at some of these players that weren't picked on this list at first. For example, I'll tell you one is Derek Dennis from the Calgary Stampeders. Until his unfortunate accident there that he got injured and broke his leg, he was on the verge of being a definite all-star and then some. Well, I'm sure he's probably, his contract stipulates in there as a performance bonus, if he gets an all-star nomination, he is going to be paid a little bit more. Well, all of a sudden he ain't getting paid anymore. You look at another guy from Saskatchewan, Keon Schaefer-Baker, was listed as the lone CFL all-star from Saskatchewan. Probably in his contract, he has a performance bonus that says, if you make the CFL all-star team, you're going to get paid a certain bonus. In the second list, he didn't make it. So I don't know how this works, and I feel terrible for the guys that were on the list that were going to get some bonus money. Now they all of a sudden don't get bonus money. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, in, for example, our senior hockey league, it's very simple. We just make a vote, and all the teams' managers vote on players, on who they think is the player of the year, the defensive player of the year, the goaltender of the year, and all that sort of thing, and manager of the year and coach of the year. And once it's all added up, that's who it is. I mean, I know you're dealing with a few more players, but you got to be able to count this and do this right. You don't look anything near like a professional league if you can't even count your votes right. Yeah, this has been an absolute black eye on the CFL. And in all honesty, I don't know whose head's got to roll, but there honestly should be probably heads rolling over this one. Ryan? You're muted, by the way.
If I can go and double and triple check the scores on our fantasy league results every single week to make sure I'm posting them correctly as the commissioner for something as borderline meaningless as that. I know there was the charity money to play for this year, but like, there's a lot at stake with these all-star nominations. Like, these should be running through multiple people. It is mind-boggling. It is insane. And you touched on the biggest gripe I have with it is, yeah, guys who, thought they were getting bonuses when they woke up and saw the news in the morning and now realize they aren't. And it's the CFL where a lot of these players aren't making life-changing money necessarily in one season, right? So those bonuses are what a lot of them rely on to make their living and to set them up in life. And to have it taken away when you thought you had the nomination, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed off if I was them. On the other hand, if I was the other players who originally, didn't make the list when you full on deserved to, like some of the guys we mentioned, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed there too. Of, well, why is this guy on the list when all of my stats are definitively better than theirs, right? Not only that, I saw a couple of guys saying, well, now I got to go call my mom and explain to her why I'm not an all-star. Like, I'm sure that's a big moment for the families for a lot of these guys as well, too. It was, just a disaster yesterday. And it's just another feather in the cap, I guess, of a thing that, there's so much talk around the issues the CFL has. I mean, all the big talk around, we still don't have a Grey Cup halftime show, and the Grey Cup is now less than 3 weeks away. I mean, we're at playoff time here. And this is one way, I guess, to distract us from that news. I don't know. But yeah, I don't have any more words on this. I don't know how this happened. And I'm glad they did put out a correct list in the end, because I looked at the list. If you want to see the full list, I won't list them all off, but you can go to the CFL website, find it on there for now until it ends up being replaced with another new list. Hopefully not. I think the new list is much better, though. A lot of these guys we talked about already did end up making the list that deserved to, and I'm just happy it resolved that way in the end. It's just an ugly way to get there.
Yeah, I think that they need the new actually a new song from Smash Mouth coming out that says, hey, now you're an all-star, get your game on. Oh, wait. Like, seriously, it has just been gruesome watching the conversations and the comments coming in on this from all over the country. I mean, I feel terrible for the guys, and I hope the CFL has some sort of solution for them. I'll presume they don't, because, it's a CFL. But again, it's a matter of $5,000, maybe $10,000 for some of these guys. It's some other ones there. But I mean, yeah, it's been a terrible week for this, Chris. But hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about what Chris was also talking about here over in the comments, that BC Place has announced that they're opening the Upper Bowl for the playoff game here coming up this weekend here against Calgary. And boy, they've done some really good things in BC, and I think they're getting rewarded, aren't they, Ryan?
Yeah, the BC Lions have done a lot of good things. I mean, we may not have a Grey Cup halftime show, but we have, 2 concerts already in the BC Lions home playoff game this coming week, right? Like they announced the halftime show, and they've got Sarah McLachlan, I think, singing the opening anthem for the game. They've opened the Upper Bowl. They've sold a lot of tickets for this game, and it's huge. And it's good to see, because we've talked so much about what Victor Cooey's done in Edmonton. We've talked so much about, what Gary Stern and crew have done over in Montreal. But BC has done a fine job as well this season to promote the game. They've really used a guy like Nathan Rourke as a selling point for the team to bring more people in. They've tried to do these halftime concerts. They've tried to do things that are clearly working. Like, all of the talk on attendance around the CFL is always negative, all right? It's, the league's dying. People aren't going to games anymore. But I actually see it as an alternative of, I have a lot of hope for a lot of these areas. Like, I have hope for BC that the attendance is going to continue to grow there going forward. Winnipeg had a strong year here. Montreal, they got more people in the seats. Yeah, you have some tough markets right now, like Edmonton. It's hard to sell people to come to a home game when you haven't won there in 2 years. Saskatchewan, Riders fans are diehards. It's hard to sell them on that. But overall, I think this is a good sign of the positive direction BC's heading. And as you mentioned, they're getting awarded for it here, Adam, because it's been announced the 2024 Grey Cup is going to be played in BC. And I am ecstatic for that. I know there's been a lot of talk about Winnipeg making a pitch. Wouldn't be surprised to see them get 2025. Honestly, I'd rather have it in 2024 in BC because they've worked darn hard to get it there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all kudos to the staff, the ownership group over in BC, the management, and the essentially the play. Everybody that's been working on the off-field kind of things for the BC Lions, whether it's tickets or merchandising or advertising, they've done an amazing job in the last little while. I mean, when was the last time you ever heard of an NFL team doing a pre-sale for a CFL West semifinal? I mean, utterly amazing that the Seattle Seahawks has a little bit of a partnership now with the BC Lions. That part has been great. And yeah, awarded the 111th Grey Cup in 2024. And as a lot of guys are saying, you know, if Nathan Rourke resigns in BC, hey, they might just be in it. You never know. And the exciting things that have been happening all the time in BC lately, they deserve to get some good news, and they deserve what they're getting. They're opening up the top section of the upper bowl of the BC Play Stadium. It sounds like they're actually going to open up the roof as well for the game. It might be showering and +1, but you know what? They're going to do it anyways because they want to go and have some fun and play in a really big raucous atmosphere. I know Calgary has been preparing for a big game this weekend with a lot of noise, and BC is planning on bringing it. The other thing I just wanted to point out really quickly on this was the prices of tickets. You can go in the upper bowl for the same price that you can almost go to for a Regina Pats WHL game. That's insane that you can go to a West semifinal in the CFL for almost the same price. And again, you're watching pretty much top quality football and enjoying yourself in a beautiful stadium in BC for, I think it's under $40. Like, how could you go wrong at that? I hope that BC fans are taking advantage of this and are going to load that stadium up for all of Sunday and have some fun with it. And also go to brunch. Apparently they got brunch just before the game. So,
oh, well, brunch, okay, I'm booking a flight right now. I mean, I was on the fence, but you throw brunch into it, I'm in, right? Like, oh, love brunch. Brunch is so good.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris just said $29 you can actually get a ticket for. So, I mean, why wouldn't you? If you're a BC fan or a Calgary fan or just a football fan, head to BC. I mean, it's going to be a great time and a great atmosphere there in BC Place on Sunday afternoon.
Absolutely. Well, that's some good news for the BC Lions. Let's move on to our next topic here. Adam, you may have thought we'd get to escape talking about the Riders for the rest of the season now that, the playoffs have started. We buried the season in the past. But we did have some breaking news here from the Riders this week that, well, we all wanted them to clean the house, but they cleaned one small room of it only with the offensive coaching staff being let go. Head coach Craig Dickinson being brought back for a new next season. Jeremy O'Day, general manager, being brought back for another season here as well. I like the analogy of cleaning the house because I'm often like this as well. I hate cleaning the entire house at once. So I'm like, okay, I'll clean one small room, right? And then it's like, well, now I don't want to do the rest today. I'll come back to that later. But when I come back to that later, then the room I've already cleaned is dirty by that point again. So it feels like you're making progress, but perhaps you never are. That's my metaphor for the day. But you're the premier Riders fan here. It might be borderline at this point after this season. I don't know. No, of course you still are. Tell us what you think of this move.
Well, first of all, if anybody wants to know, I went as the Joker this year for Halloween, just like Trey. But when I was asked how I got these scars, it was mostly from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So anyway, I didn't like it. I'll be honest. But again, I know that the Riders are probably also handicapped a little bit from the CFL. There is a CFL coaches cap. And because of that, that means that the Rough Riders, having Jeremy O'Day and Craig Dickinson and all in a over the contract year, I think it goes till 2023, their current contracts, means they still got to pay them out, and that still counts against the cap. So I could see why they didn't let those two guys go. I don't like how the Rough Riders did this, to be honest with you, because they just essentially sent out a press release saying, here's what we did, and got Jeremy O'Day to give Craig Dickinson a pat in the back, and then got Craig Reynolds to give Jeremy O'Day a pat in the back, and then waited until doing media interviews until, there was a fire like, I don't know, messing up all-star ballots. So essentially, Rider Nation, really, I mean, I've seen a lot of guys saying this is a good start, but there was a lot more that needed to be done. In a way, I know that what can you do when you got that coach's salary cap in there? So I don't like it, but I understand why they did what they had to do. The offense was clearly the problem in Saskatchewan this year. Jason Moss had a lot of issues deciding if he wants to run the ball, if he doesn't want to run the ball. Halfway through the game, he changes his mind and then doesn't run the ball and runs the ball. It was just a very strange certain of things. However, that wasn't the only issue with the Saskatchewan Roughriders this year. It was just the lack of offense. It was discipline, which is usually on your head coach. And it was funny signings. Again, Duke Williams, at the time, it looked like an okay signing, but $300,000 is what you paid for essentially 400 yards this year. That doesn't cut the mustard. So in Saskatchewan, they had a lot of guys that underperformed their contracts by quite a bit, whether it be injury or by just not being able to perform. So to me, that's a responsibility on the manager to make sure that you've got the right guys. Combine that with we don't have a Grey Cup halftime act yet. That's why I've been screaming at the president about the president of the Rough Riders. To me, it was a good start, but they should have done more. But again, I see why they couldn't. So it sucks. And Chris, you're right. The GM salary cap messes things up. It's actually, like I said, it's a player personnel salary cap. It's designed so that one team can't go and sign 30 coaches and then leave nothing for another team. I understand why the CFL wanted to do that. I don't know why you can't take things off the cap, though, when a guy is released like they are. So to me, it's got to be worked on, and I hope that they can figure out something with this. I don't think there's such a thing as a coaches union, so I think maybe the teams can figure this out together. But yeah, I don't like the move, but again, I like that they did something, but I don't really think they did enough. But also, I see why they couldn't. So, right.
Yeah, because of the darn coaches cap, like if you're letting both these guys go for this next year where they're still under contract, like you're not going to be able to bring in a real suitable candidate and pay them enough to do the jobs they need to do. So I understand why both Craig Dickinson and Jeremy O'Day were brought back. As much as I agree with you, I don't like it. I'm very happy to see Jason Maas and crew go. A run game coordinator, offensive line coach Steven Sorrells, receivers coach Travis Moore also let go by the Riders here. I think that needed to happen because, I had a lot of concerns with the offensive game plan this year as well. Craig Dickinson, I would let go if the coach's cap wasn't in the way, just because I think, a lot of his words and actions were confusing this season. A lot of talk about, this team has dealt with injuries and we're going to bring it back strong at the end of the season. And the culture is properly in place here with the team when we repeatedly saw examples of why it wasn't. So, I would have canned Craig Dickinson. What I will say is, if anything, if you're not going to fully clean house, I would potentially leave Jeremy O'Day in there, actually. He messed up by not filling the offensive line last season. Absolutely. But now more than ever, after you give up, 70-something sacks on the year, like, it is clear as day that this is the focus point he needs to have going into this offseason. So I would be willing to potentially give him a chance to say, okay, you better go out and fix this. And if you're not fixing it soon enough, then you're done, right? Like there's a clear goal for them to fix. And, now they're going to have to do that in the offseason here with the guys back. And focus is going to be on that offensive line. Focus is going to be on figuring out what the heck to do with the quarterback. And focus for Craig Dickinson needs to be on making sure you have that room under control and bought in and ready to go, because you can bring in all the high-priced free agents you want this offseason. Like, they're going to spend the money. They're going to throw boatloads of money to try to bring in the top offensive linemen in free agency. I'm ready to, give my stamp on that. But it's going to do nothing if you don't get them all on the same page.
Well, exactly. And the thing that I want to see Craig Dickinson do is make the tough decision if you have to early. Don't let it go and fester. If the guy there is a guy that's not well with the room, whether it was Garrett Marino in this year or if it was Duke Williams, make the move when you got to make the move. If you got to let the guy go, let the guy go. You can't have a room and you can't have a lost room because of two or three guys, essentially. I know that there was a lot of Rider fans that said, "Oh wow, look, we lost all these games because Garrett Marino was lost, or because they let go of Garrett Marino." You know what? I'll argue that to the death that having a guy like Garrett Marino sit in that room for another 4 or 5 weeks and essentially go and complain and whine and moan, I'm guessing, about his suspension and saying he was picked on and this and that probably just ruined the team. And there's still some talent left on this team. Like, I mean, next year, Keon Schaefer-Baker is not a free agent. He'll be back next year. You've got Frankie Hickson, who, hey, you got a cheap running back right now. Maybe you don't re-sign Jamal Morrow, or you bring in another guy to play underneath Frankie Hickson. That could be an option as well. You've still got Logan Ferland, who is the offensive lineman of the year for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I know, not saying much, but hey, it is a guy that you still have on contract. And you still have Braden Lenius next year, also on contract. You do have the pieces there to help yourself. I know AC Leonard's back as well. If they keep him, they may release him from his big contract. I'm not sure. But they still do have some pieces around that aren't free agents this year. I know Pete Robertson is a free agent. That's probably one of the priorities for Jeremy O'Day, I would think. And give him some pieces around him because I don't think you're going to get Charleston Hughes back after sitting him for an entire year. And I don't think you need him. You need to get younger. This is the time when Saskatchewan has to rebuild. And I sure hope that Jeremy O'Day understands what he did wrong last year and decides to repair what he did wrong so that this team can come back to prominence for 2023.
I still maintain they were a good football team on paper this year. Like, the team had the depth on the roster. If you get a couple more offensive linemen in there and Cody Fajardo ends up on the ground, say 10, 20 less times throughout the season, like, that probably ends up with you in the playoffs. Like, it probably changes the trajectory, not only of the field position in the games, but of his morale, his mentality, the team mentality. Like, it's got to be frustrating for a quarterback to deal with that situation there. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that no matter what quarterback you could have back there, you could have Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills back there right now. It don't matter. If you don't have an offensive line, you're done. So essentially, it could be Cody Fajardo. Who knows? Maybe they can mend fences. I don't see it happening, to be honest with you. But there are some interesting names that'll be probably coming up here in free agency. So I'm sure Saskatchewan's going to be looking for a very depends what they want to do. If they think that they can actually just do a retooling here and end up getting back into the playoffs, look for a veteran quarterback. If you don't, maybe you look at a guy like Chad Kelly or another quarterback that's a little bit younger, bring him in and learn him and let him develop in Saskatchewan and build your own quarterback.
Well, let's move on to talking about the playoffs here. And, we're going to make our full playoff predictions at the end of the show here today. But first, I think we got to go through and break down the matchups. And in doing so, honestly, I think it's going to help me make my picks later on in the show. I am undecided on my playoff bracket as of this point in the show. So I'm hoping you can maybe help convince me to lean one direction or the other on a number of these matchups. Let's start out east. We've got the Hamilton Tiger Cats visiting the Montreal Alouettes in the East Division semifinals. Season series between these two teams. I pulled it up here back in late July. The Ticats beat the Alouettes 24-17. In mid-August, Montreal took one 29-28, a big 1-point victory there for them. Montreal also took the matchup. I believe, if I'm seeing correctly, they played 3 times. Montreal won in September 23-16, so a 2-1 season series here for the Montreal Alouettes. Let's go. I think the best way to break down these playoff matchups and to make sure we cover everything is to look at break down position versus position, or I guess segment of the game versus segment of the game. Well, let's start off with the offensive side of the ball here. Hamilton, Montreal. How do you see these two teams, and which side do you give the edge to?
Myself, I'm going to give my edge to the Montreal Alouettes in this case. You look at a experienced quarterback like Trevor Harris, who's had very good success sometimes in the Grey Cup or even in the playoffs. Had some moments there and had a few good runs there with the Ottawa Redblacks. So he's been in the playoffs. He knows what this is all about. So does Dane Evans. I'm not going to say he doesn't. However, Dane Evans just hasn't been the same this year. However, that being said, playoff Dane Evans is also a little bit different than regular season Dane Evans. Last year, we seen him take his team all the way to the Grey Cup until the Winnipeg Blue Bombers stepped in the way, which seems to be one of his boogeymen. Anyways, that being said, on quarterbacks, I still have more faith right now in Trevor Harris. He seems to be a lot more comfortable in the backfield. And speaking of backfields, you look at the running game in this one. You've got William Stanback, who is just right back with pretty fresh legs, who hasn't played a whole lot all season, and can really get ready to run versus another guy that's been kind of a tandem in Hamilton with Wes Hillis and also with Sean Thomas Hurlington. I'm going to give the edge to William Stanback. He looks like a quarterback or a running back that's ready to roll and can move downfield and usually goes north and south very easily. So to me, I'm going to go on the running back side. I'll go with Montreal. Receiving side of the football, if Montreal starts to click, I think they've got a deeper receiving core for sure. You look at Eugene Lewis, you look at Tyson Filippo, you look at even a guy like Jake Winicky, who hasn't had a great year, but he should be ready to go for the playoffs here. And let's hope that he can get something done and forgets about his kind of poor regular season there. But over on the other side of the football, there's really been only one guy that I could see was Tim White that really stood out for Hamilton. And I mean, if he's going and the Montreal defense has no answer for him, he could make an interesting case for Hamilton. However, I just don't like the guy throwing him the football at the moment, being Dane Evans. And I don't like that they don't have a real established. They've been trying to in the last few weeks establish a little bit of a run game. I don't know. I think I'm still going to go with Montreal for the offense on this one.
Right? It's pretty even, actually. I was just looking up the team stats on this. Like my initial thought was lean Montreal on offense as well. Montreal's averaged 23 points a game. Hamilton's averaged 21.2. Rushing wise, I think they've both been kind of running back by committee this season. Yeah, Stanback, should be one of the best backs in the game, but like Richard in the chat says, I don't think he's been particularly sharp since he's returned. I think Walter Fletcher is actually probably in the past couple of weeks looked like the best running back out of all of them between these teams. I'd put Wes Hills right behind there for Hamilton. Receiving game, you've got Eugene Lewis on one side as the big name, Tim White on the other side for Hamilton. Then I would go, maybe like Jake Winicky and Stephen Dunbar about equal. Dunbar's had a better year, but Winicky, he can have those big games. He had a couple down the stretch there. Maybe he's heating up for the playoffs. I think this is very even on offense, and I think the side I'm going to go to here, though, is Montreal, and I think it might be because of the offensive line. I feel like their offensive line has been very underrated this season. They've kept Trevor Harris up and standing quite a bit. He hasn't, lit up a ton of games, but he's also played decent game manager mentality here for them. So I like that in a playoff game. Dane Evans, yeah, he's the more explosive quarterback, I think, but he also can turn the ball more often. So I think it's going to come down to turnovers in this game. So I think I got to slightly lean Montreal's favor on offense, but it's close for me there. Let's look at defensive side of the ball here next. Montreal's defense versus Hamilton's defense here. That one's a tough one for me as well. I don't think either of them have been particularly huge standout performers all season long between the different defenses, right? Montreal has had a couple games where that D line played really well. Hamilton has had some big turnover games, but been underwhelming at times. I think the team I lean to on defense, though, is Hamilton. because of the penalty factor. I see Montreal's discipline, the defensive pass interference penalties, more frequently coming from the Alouettes than I do from the Ticats. And that to me is the detriment when talent-wise, I think there's a lot there. It's the defensive discipline I think is worse for Montreal. So I got to give Hamilton the nod on defense. What about you?
Actually, I'm going to give the Montreal Alouettes the nod also on the defense, and there's only one reason behind that is the turnover ratio. You look at Montreal, it wasn't the best. It was only a +1 turnover ratio. However, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, -22. If Hamilton goes and starts committing a lot of turnovers, and Dane Evans is known for getting hit and losing the ball once in a while, this could be a very, very long day for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Montreal, I believe, is one of the teams that puts one of the most amounts of pressure on quarterbacks as well. They usually always play a very aggressive front line with their defense. So to me, I like the Montreal strategy more. I give you credit, though. The penalties are a concern. And if Montreal starts committing a lot of penalties, which they are known to do throughout the season, it could also turn the ball the other way and cause Hamilton to have a lot of short fields. That being said, though, I just don't like that turnover ratio one bit, and that's why I'm going to go with Montreal even on the defense.
So then let's talk special teams here. On one side, you've got Seth Small kicking field goals. The other side, David Cote. You've got Chandler Worthy returning kicks. I think it's Lawrence Woods is on the other side for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Both good return men there. Do you see one team having the edge on special teams here?
This one's pretty tough because I think they're very even on both sides of this. I think Chandler Worthy's probably the better returner. I mean, he's had a few good returns against a few teams for touchdowns this season. So Chandler Worthy, I think, will be gives the advantage a little bit to Montreal. But on the other side, I think in kicker-wise, I would probably go with Seth Small, though, because I think he probably has the longer leg if it has to go to kicking. And I think that he's probably the more accurate kicker out of the two, if I'm not mistaken. So to me, I'm going to probably maybe slightly lean Hamilton's way because kicking is so important when it comes to a playoff game. But Montreal will keep up with them, I think. And if Chandler Worthy can get going early and get the yards downfield very quickly, you got short fields, so it helps Montreal. But I don't like choosing these ones. I'm going to go with Hamilton just slightly, right?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same camp as you there on that one. His ability to hit field goals from 50 or 55 yards is if this is coming down to, 20 seconds left on the clock, Hamilton gets the ball and they need to drive downfield. They only have to drive so far because Seth Small can nail those from that far away, and that's the big thing to me. I don't give either return man real big of an edge. Maybe I lean a little bit more towards Chandler Worthy there, but I think they're both two very talented players and teams that can break a big return that flips the field for field position here. So I would call it pretty even, but I'll give the kicking game edge to the Ticats here. So then it brings us to our last category, which is coaching. We've got Danny Machocha on one end, who, stepped in, took over the role this year after he let Kahari Jones go and has taken the Alouettes to the playoffs, to his credit, against Orlando Steinauer, who has been a mainstay there the past number of years. And it seemed like maybe he was under a bit more of hot water earlier this season. Of course, both these teams, to Richard's comment in the chat, have been rolling decently well down the stretch. I mean, Hamilton's won 5 of their last 6, and 2 of those were against Winnipeg and Calgary. There was that one point kind of mid to late season where Montreal had won, I think, 5 of 6 or something close to that as well. So both these teams have had good stretches here. I mean, I'm going to give the coaching edge to Orlando Steinauer because I don't think Danny Machocha necessarily, fixed the discipline problem that he went and said he was, basically firing Kahari Jones for. So I think Orlando Steinauer is still a good coach, but it's a tough one because offensive play calling, Tommy Condell and Hamilton. If we want to go full in depth on the coaching staff, right? I like the play calling of the Alouettes better. than I do Hamilton. Hamilton's made some questionable decisions this year. I might actually have to lean Montreal and the coaching staff here. What about you?
No, I'm going to lean towards Hamilton for quite actually heavily on this one. I think Orlando Steinauer, he knows how to coach in a playoff game, and he's taken his team to the Grey Cup a few years now. So I think he has the veteran advantage on that part. However, Danny Machocha won a Grey Cup with Edmonton as well, so he does know what to get out of his players. However, you've got one wild card in this whole thing, and it's an offensive advisor to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, which is Kahari Jones, oddly enough. And I think that'll give Hamilton a little bit of an advantage, maybe just in preparation for this game, if nothing else, because Kahari knows what it is when you're going into Montreal and playing a playoff game before. And he's been on both sides now of the football. I'm a little concerned with Tommy Condell because I don't know if he's quite the right guy in Hamilton as an offensive coach. We've seen him do some very strange things over the last year. But that being said, I don't. I like Orlando Steinauer's crew a little more than I like Danny Machocha's crew. So to me, I'm going to go with the Ticats.
Now, anything else you're looking at in this game that you're excited to watch and see, or any players specifically you have your eye on here?
I'm going to be watching the defense on Hamilton's sideline mainly. They're known for going after a quarterback a little bit as well. And Simone Lawrence is back. So I want to see if he actually can make a factor into this game or if he can't. Micah Johnson has been just absolutely lights out lately as well, has made some big plays for the Ticats. So I'm going to be watching him to see what he can do in that defensive line. So essentially, I want to see how this D line stacks up, and the linebacking core lines up against the Montreal Alouettes is probably one of the bigger parts I'm watching. And I'm watching Dane Evans to see what he does when he has all the pressure on him on this one. He's proven in the past that he can take pressure, but this has been a different year for him. I don't know if he has all the weapons like he used to have for those other cup runs on the offense. So to me, I want to see what he does with it. If he all of a sudden commits a lot of turnovers, which was Hamilton's kind of pain in the butt there at the beginning of the year. But that's what I'm mainly watching is Dane Evans to see what he does for turnovers. And I'm watching that defensive line and linebacking core for the Ticats and seeing what they can do to get some pressure over on Trevor Harris.
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely the turnover battle is going to make the difference, like I said, because you mentioned, early season turnovers were the big knock on Dane Evans. He can throw a big game, 300, 400 yards, but if he's turning over the ball a lot, that's not going to be productive for them. And go back to last year's crazy playoff game between these two teams where it was all Montreal, I'm pretty sure, early in the game. And then I think Trevor Harris fumbled once or twice, got them returned back for at least one of them was returned back for a touchdown. And it completely changed the tide of the game. And the Ticats didn't look back from there. So, whichever team can control the ball more, I think, is going to be the team that is able to get this done in advance in this one. We'll make our official picks on this game straight up and against the spread later on in the show. Stay tuned for that at the end as we do our full playoff brackets there. But for now, let's preview the West semifinal as well. And I am giddy to talk about this game. I am giddy to watch this game this weekend. The Calgary Stampeders going into BC Place to face the BC Lions. And we are in for a treat of a football game, I think, between these two teams. I have been very high on what they've done, both of them, over the past number of weeks. Let's take or throughout the season, I should say. Let's take a look at the season series between them first. Back on August 13th, BC won 41-40 in a wild shootout of a game there. After that, we had the home and home series in September for them, where BC won 31-29 in an overtime game, followed by Calgary winning 25-11 in the rematch the week after. So 2-1, the Lions go and say, they win the season series. But very close football games. One overtime game, one that was 1 point difference. So pretty even clubs here. Let's start on the offense here again in this matchup. BC Calgary, who do you give the edge to?
Do I have to pick? I mean, seriously, this is a great matchup. Nathan Rourke has all the weapons back as far as I'm concerned. However, I should say the Lucky Whitehead was absent in practice today. So we'll put that with a star. But Brian Burnham should be back for this game. You've still got Devere Posey. You've still got all those, not Devere Posey, sorry. I am brain dead today. Sorry.
Keon Hatcher, Dominic Grimes.
Dominic Rhymes I was thinking of. It's one of those days. Sorry, folks. And you still got Jovan Gatoy. You still got Hatcher. You've still got lots of pieces in that BC offense that are dangerous weapons. Oh, and by the way, they also have James Butler in there as well, who has had an amazing season with the BC Lions. You've also got a very well-rested Nathan Rourke and a guy that wants to prove that, hey, yeah, I was injured, but I want to stick it to the rest of the league, and I want my Hall of Fame nomination, and I want it now, as long as they count the votes right. That being said, over on the other side of it, Calgary also has got a completely different team this year. One of the best offensive lines, I think, in the CFL. They have not allowed any real amount of pressure being on their new quarterback, Jake Mayer. Oh, and by the way, if Jake Mayer gets taken out, I don't know. They have some guy named Bo Levi Mitchell. Never heard of him, but he should be okay, I think. You've also got one of the best rushing games in all the CFL right now in Kadeem Carey and Dedrick Mills. And by the way, Tommy Stevens. He can also run a football. I don't know how I know that. I won't talk about that because, yeah, we don't need to talk about that game last week. Anyways, the receiving core, too, is just dynamo on that team. You've still got Richardson Danny, who's been better and better all year. You've got Kamar Jordan, who usually is a guy that can usually take it up a notch in the playoffs. You're going to have all those receiving cores back. Malik Henry as well is going to be back for the further game here. There is no edge in this one here, I won't say. Really, I'm going to pretty much put it right down the middle because to me, it's two quarterbacks for their first playoff game ever. They're both going to be first-time starters. There's going to be nerves. There's going to be a few little mistakes, I'm sure, but it's who doesn't make the mistakes and who can finish off the drive or finish off the throw that's going to win this game, I think. And this is probably true for a little bit more of this, but I'm putting these two teams at even. I can't pick one.
It's so tough. And you look at the stats, points per games played, points per game. Number 2 and 3 in the league, BC 27.7, Calgary 27.6. Yards per game of offense. BC in first at 386, Calgary right behind at 376 in second. Rushing totals, Kadeem Carey was number 1 with 28 more yards than James Butler. Did play 3 less games to his credit there, though, as well. It's tough for me. The way I break it down, Calgary, absolutely the better offensive line. No question about that. As much as they didn't get any all-star nominees in the first go-around, glad that was corrected because they have been fantastic. They've barely given up a sack all season. Rushing game, yeah, I got to give a bit of an edge to Calgary there. Although I don't think James Butler, if they use him properly in the offense, is that far behind the rushing game of Kadeem Carey here. I think he's a very viable option. And I think he's going to be used most effectively in that offense with Nathan Rourke in the lineup because I think the offensive play calling is just that much smarter when he's in the lineup because you can do so much more with him there. Wide receiver, I have to give a nod to BC, though. I think that, losing Whitehead sucks, but you've got Dominic Rhymes. You mentioned all of the guys basically already. They've been stacked at wide receiver all season long. Calgary has been, in and out, and injuries have played a large part of that as well, where, Reggie Bagleton's been solid. Malik Henry has been fantastic this year, but Kamar Jordan really hasn't done a whole ton when he was in the lineup. Then you've got a couple up-and-coming guys that have been filling the other spots and rotating through. So BC, I give the edge at wide receiver. Calgary, I give a bit of an edge at running back. Calgary, I give an edge at offensive line. Then it comes down to the quarterback for me. I really have Nathan Rourke much higher than I have Jake Mayer. I still like Jake Mayer and what he's done this season, but the Nathan Rourke factor is something else, and we've seen him just dominate and take over games this season. Like, we have not really seen Jake Mayer do. So I give a big nod to them there. If he's fully healthy and ready to go. I'm based on the Rourke factor alone, I think I'm going to give the offensive nod to the BC Lions. And that's partially because this is a dome game in BC. If this was cold weather Calgary, I'm giving it to Calgary, the edge on offense all day because of the run game and offensive line. But that's kind of how I see it for a game in BC. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. What do you think on defense here, Adam?
I think both teams are pretty even as well. The secondary, I probably give it a little bit of an advantage to the BC Lions. You've got a guy like Lucius Purifoy back there that can just make a play on, well, almost anywhere on the field, essentially. Up front, you've got a good defensive line, but I think that the defensive line and linebacking core of the Calgary Stampeders are a little bit better. You've got a guy like Cam Judge who's made some big plays all season. You've also got Sean Lemon, who's had just an amazing season for the Calgary Stampeders, and I think who finally got his All-Star nod. I don't know. We may have to recount it again. But nevertheless, I think the Stampeders' defensive line is a little bit stronger maybe than the BC Lions. That's questionable, though, because the BC Lions do have a few pieces in there of their own that are very strong in there as well. And I do like the BC Lions secondary a little bit more. Again, like I say, I'm really high on Purifoy. So it's very hard for me to say on this one as well. This should be a good contest. But I think if Calgary can establish the run early, and I think if BC holds off that rushing right away, I think BC has a very good chance to win this game. But if Calgary goes and starts being able to slowly pound the football with Kadeem Carey or Dedrick Mills or Tommy Stevens or even Peyton Logan, or I can almost go on and on and on and on and on, I could see Calgary making this a very long, drawn-out game for the BC Lions. If the BC Lions, though, are able to kind of back off and maybe make Jake Mayer have to throw on second and long a little bit, I really do like the secondary of the BC Lions a bit more than I do the Calgary Stampeders. So I'm going to give the edge right now to the Calgary Stampeders, actually, because I do like defensive lines, and I always say that the trenches are where the games are going to be won and lost at this time of the year. So to me, I think the defensive line of Calgary's is a little bit stronger, especially with the linebacking core that they've been showing all year. So to me, I'm going to go with Calgary. But it's very close again. This game here, the whole game is close.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Calgary on defense as well because of the trench battle. I think, their defensive line has put up sack after sack after sack, it seems, this season. They have been very, very good. And that offensive line, I don't think is as good in BC as it is in Calgary. I mean, Calgary's barely given up any sacks all season. And they've put up the most on defense. They put up 56, 9 more than any other team in the league. Yeah, they gave up a lot of yards and points early in the year, but it was almost kind of like a sneaky version of the Bombers' bend that don't break defense where, give up points, give up yards, but then make the big plays when you need to. I think it comes down to that defensive line when it comes to the secondary and, the defensive backfield. I think that's pretty even for me. And I think it's honestly kind of been a tale of two seasons for these teams. BC's defense was the much better one early in the year to me. But then they kind of, after Nathan Rourke went down, they kind of slid a little bit because they needed to do a little bit more when he was out, right? And Calgary, I think, picked up their game down the stretch. So to me, they get the advantage on defense. Special teams. We've got Rene Paredes on one side. We've got Sean White on the other. Cody Grace and for Calgary, Stefan Flintoff for the kicking for BC in terms of the punting game. In terms of the return game, Peyton Logan for Calgary, Terry Williams for BC. Oh boy, is it tough to figure out and tough to decipher between these two teams here at special teams as well. I think I got to give a bit of a nod to Calgary, though. I mean, Peyton Logan is explosive, and Terry Williams has been good, too, and it was a great addition for BC. But I also think Cody Grace is a heck of a punter, and Rene Paredes is one of the most consistent kickers over the past decade. Then again, Sean White is as well. So maybe it is actually an even game, I guess. Yeah, you know what? I'll go even down the stretch. I convinced myself as I talked about it here. I think these two teams are dead even on special teams. Oh, but then I think of the cover game isn't as good for BC. See, there's so many layers to this that I figure out as we go. Okay, yeah, I'll give it a bit of a nod to Calgary because BC's cover unit hasn't been as good this year.
No, I agree 100% with you on that. And the other one I still say is Rennie Paredes has been just amazing in every game that he's played in, except for one in a West semifinal in Saskatchewan last year. So, maybe I should be looking out for this. Cody Grace, I mean, he has got to be one of the toughest son of a guns that there is on a field. Just because last week he tries to get his own football back, does manage to do it, but ends up dislocating a finger, gets it strapped back up, and away he goes again. So, you know what? I give the edge to Calgary just for that reason alone. But Peyton Logan, you're right, has been just amazing and lights out this year. Always seems to give at least good yardage for the Calgary Stampeders to start at. And BC has had their issues a little bit on special teams. So to me, Sean White is a good kicker, but I still give the edge to the Calgary Stampeders. I think that they're the more complete special teams right now in the West.
Oh, and then we compare coaches. You got Rick Campbell over in BC. We've got Dave Dickinson over in Calgary. I feel like two different coaching philosophies, most definitely, between these two teams, but two very good coaching staffs here. Who do you give it to at coaching? Is there an edge?
Not much of one, if there is. I mean, Rick Campbell has got those BC Lions running through walls essentially this year, especially after the dismal year last year. I'm just utterly stunned to see the development of this BC Lions team immediately. So Rick Campbell has done something very good, and I actually had him as my coach of the year nominee just because of that. No offense to Mike O'Shea, but I mean, you look at a guy like what BC has done this year. They went from essentially the basement of the West over to hosting a playoff game, and pretty convincingly hosting a playoff game. I think they had 13 wins, if I'm not mistaken, or 12 wins. Nevertheless, I give it to I like the BC Lions. However, on the other side, you've got Dave Dickinson. I mean, how do you go against a guy that's won multiple Grey Cups over the years, has been a quarterback in this league, can calm down a young quarterback like Jake Mayer, probably better than anyone, and has been pretty much through almost any situation that there's been in a playoff game? So I don't know. There's really not an edge on this one to me. I'm going to slightly lean towards, I don't even want to say it, but maybe Calgary just because of Dave Dickinson and John Hufnagel. Because, I mean, even Hufnagel is a calming influence on that team. So, I don't know. In all honesty, the needle is so slightly bent towards Calgary. It's not even funny. It's pretty much, you wouldn't even tell if you looked at it. It's essentially a tie.
I love both of these teams' offensive game plans, specifically from the coaching staff, right? Like, I think Jordan Matsumitz has put up a brilliant offensive game plan for the Lions for a good chunk of this season. And on Calgary's side, they're one of the only teams that has learned to lean on a run game in the CFL and effectively do so and do a dual back system, even when you have the best running back in the league and Kadeem Carey.
Give credit to their coach, their assistant coaches. I mean, Mark Mueller has done a great job in Calgary ever since coming in there, and I mean, he's been through a lot of situations in the playoffs too now.
I also gave Dave Dickinson some credit for making the tough decision to bench Bo Levi Mitchell for the second half of the season. When you have a guy as good as Bo has been, and it's hard to view current versus legacy. And to put Jake Mayer, who is your best quarterback on your roster right now, in there. I think there's also something to be said about, to get better, you need to lose occasionally. And if we look at these teams, Calgary's lost in the playoffs a lot over the past day. They've won in the playoffs a lot. They've gotten to the Grey Cup, but they had some heartbreaking playoff losses where there was kind of that stigma around Calgary. And it's the same management and coaching staff there and the same team culture that, eventually you learn a little bit how to win out of that, right? So I think I do give Calgary an advantage, even though, like you said, the needle is pretty small there. And that's the case on a lot of the categories in this game. I am still so undecided, and I will delay our playoff predictions as long as I can to figure out who to take in this football game. Well, we'll get to that here in a bit, but first, CFL Fantasy doesn't just stop at the end of the regular season. That goes into the playoffs here as well, Adam. You can play CFL Fantasy for the playoffs on the official site. It's a whole different ball game, though, for the playoffs, because instead of a $40,000 salary cap, it's $30,000, and you have one less running back, you have one less wide receiver. Obviously, there's only 2 games, 4 teams to pick from for each, so it's tougher when it comes to playoffs. There aren't a whole lot of options. So let's start with quarterbacks. And I figured the way to do this, because there are so few options, is give me your 1 to 4 rankings of the starting quarterbacks for this week. We've got Nathan Rourke at $11,000. That's about a third of your salary cap, just over. Trevor Harris at $9,509. Jake Mayer is $8,900, or Dane Evans is $7,500. How would you rank the options for quarterback for fantasy this week?
Oh man, this is a very tough one for me because I really want to take Nathan Rourke, because just the Nathan Rourke show in BC has been just incredible this year. So I think I'm going to take him anyways. I know he's real expensive at $11,000, but I'm going to take Nathan Rourke first. To me, next would probably be Trevor Harris. I think Trevor Harris is a good option for guys if they need one. He is not cheap either. I don't think he's $9,509, but you got to pick somebody. Jake Mayer is $8,900. I don't mind him. I think he'd be my third choice in all honesty, and Dane Evans is my fourth choice. I just do not feel like he's got much of a hope in this one here for the Ticats. I don't like him as much, and I'm sure on the chat, Richard and Chris will be telling me all about it in about 2 seconds.
Well, here's the thing, because I've been looking at trying to set my whole lineup for the week. Dane Evans, I might slot in. Call me crazy. I may slot in as my number 1 option in this ranking at quarterback this week because of the price. It's so hard to fit them in with the options. With only 4 teams playing, half your real good cheap value plays are out the window at the other positions. Dane Evans had a playoff game last year where he went, 18 of 18, perfect 100% after coming in off the bench to lead them to a win during a playoff game last year. So he has that ability in him. If he can get the turnovers down, I think he is a potentially viable option for the cheaper price if he can spend at the other positions, because he does save you so much money, and money is hard to come by in this. So you know what? Right now I'm leaning Dane Evans as my number 1 option. I'll put Nathan Rourke as my number 2 option because I think he can put up that 30-point week. Trevor Harris against Hamilton, I think I like that a little bit more than I like Jake Mayer against BC, but those are kind of a tie for 3rd and 4th for me this week. So I think quarterback all season long, I've been leaning towards the cheaper value plays. I think I got to do that in the playoffs here as well at quarterback. Now let's do the same thing at running backs, although that muddies the waters a little bit because there may be some dual back systems here in play. We've got Kadeem Carey from Calgary is $9,500. James Butler of BC is $9,000. William Stanback, $6,500. Hamilton, whether it's Don Jackson or Wes Hills, they're both around $6,000. Then if you go for some of the potential backups, Dedrick Mills is $4,000. Walter Fletcher is $4,000. Sean Thomas Erlington is $3,000. Lots to choose from. So maybe we don't need to go rank them all because that might take us a little bit here. But at running back this week, I really like the usage of Kadeem Carey in that Calgary offense. But how much are they going to spell in Dedrick Mills into there? I don't love the Hamilton options because you never know who's going to get it. And we saw one game this year where they ran the ball very well. Montreal seems to be splitting time between the guys here as well. Honestly, I think the best option might be James Butler at $9,000, just based on volume alone. And if that defensive pass at rush for Calgary is going to try to get to Nathan Rourke, there could be a bunch of dump off passes to James Butler if Rourke's mobility isn't 100% there. So I think he's my leading candidate for running back this week. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I just to look at the rest of them and say I don't know what they're going to do, because you're right. William Stanback hasn't done a whole lot really since coming back, and you may have a lot of Walter Fletcher in there. Over on Hamilton's side of the football, it's the same situation. I mean, Wes Hillis, or is it going to be Sean Thomas Erlington? If it's Sean Thomas Erlington, it's a cheap pick, but is he going to play any amount? On Calgary side of the football, it's the same thing as well. You've got two very capable running backs in Kadeem Carey and in Dedrick Mills, and in also sometimes they move in. Oh man, why did my brain just go and have a brain fart right at the wrong moment?
Peyton Logan.
Peyton Logan, that's the name. Thank you. Nevertheless, I could see Calgary maybe even using a three-back system for all you know. So to me, the only one that is a very solid pick that is definitely the number one running back in the playoffs right now that are playing in the West or East semifinals is James Butler. He's expensive. He's $9,000, but he should play the whole game. That being said, BC also has a very good passing game. Nathan Rourke can run a ball pretty good, and sometimes that may affect how much they actually run James Butler, because if they start passing the ball quite a bit, I could see them all of a sudden going away from James Butler if the passing game is there. So I'm going to probably go with James Butler as well. It means I got to switch my quarterback probably to Trevor Harris, because that's almost $18,000 or more, or $19,000 or $20,000. That's half my roster on two players. So I'm probably going to have to switch my quarterback, but yeah, I'm going to go James Butler as well.
Yeah, you're not going to fit that in probably with Nathan Rourke, but that's why, I lean maybe taking a chance on Dane Evans, because I feel like Butler is the best option at running back this week, given that he gets the sole workload. The question is, how much do they run the ball? Wide receiver, it's a real tough week this week with so few options, because you can't lean on a lot of there's no Dalton Schoen to pick. There's no, can't pick like Dylan Mitchell, any of the guys we typically like to lean on. Well, most of them at least. It's also a tight salary cap where you're probably not spending $10,000 on Tim White or Eugene Lewis necessarily this week. So where do you go at wide receiver? Are there any options that catch your eye there?
I took a look here. I like, again, I'm going expensive on my first two picks, right? So I've got to really, really take some cheap options when it moves on here. So my two picks right now are Luther Hakanavanu, who is a very risky pick because, again, he has not played a lot of CFL playoff games. Well, none, actually. So is he going to play much in the game here? I hope he plays a little bit, but it'll depend on the injury situation over in Calgary this week. I see that Malik Henry is still marked as a no. So if he is, then maybe you might see Hakanavanu in the roster a little bit for the Stampeders, and is a reasonable pick as well. Also like the pickup of Jovan Katoy. This may switch very, very quick to Alexander Hollins if I hear any hint of a pickup of Lucky Whitehead not being able to play in this game. If he can't, I'm going Hollins all day, every day, and 100 times after that. But if it's not, then I think I'm going to probably go with Jovan Katoy. I don't mind him as well. Maybe even one of the Tyson Philippote. I don't mind him as well, but we'll see on that one. I'm not as comfortable with Montreal as I am maybe with BC. So yeah, I'll stick with Katoy right now. But again, if like Whitehead's gone, I am all over Alexander Hollins.
You read my mind on that one. That's where I'm at as well. I was looking at that as that's probably my best cheap value play when it comes to fantasy this week is Alexander Hollins. But if he's not available, then maybe it's one of the Hamilton guys and try and just pick one and hope for the best. Anthony Johnson, Keandre Smith, Terry Godwin, they've all had good games at times this season. Perhaps an underrated one, Kion Julian Grant had the big game in the meaningless week 21. I mean, not a huge game, 4 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. He's had his moments this year, though, where Trevor Harris has looked at him for a long play here and there that could potentially work out there. Yeah, there's really not a whole ton of options at wide receiver. I mean, the Philpott brothers, Tyson's at 39.25. Jalen Philpott 45.11, potentially looking at those as middle range prices. And then
actually, I'm going to give you one more just from Hamilton's side of the things. Take a look at Lamar Durant. You know what? He's a veteran. He should be okay for the playoffs. Hamilton didn't really get him involved early this year, but hey, sometimes those guys just stick out in the playoffs that haven't been used all year. And $3,370. He's very cheap. It's a risk for sure because he hasn't been used much all year. But if he's good, he might just be an option as well if you're a Hamilton Ticats fan and want to pick up a Ticat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And didn't he win the most outstanding Canadian in the Grey Cup when Calgary won it a couple of years ago, I believe, because he had a big game. He had a touchdown or two in that one. So he comes to play in the playoffs. Interesting middle-priced option, $5,000, Jake Wieneke I currently have slotted into my lineup. And I have not thought about putting him in my lineup since week number 2. But the last game he played in week 20, he put up 5 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. It was the best game he's played all year. We know he has the capability to be involved. Reggie White Jr. is out, so that takes out a piece in the offense as well. There's a whole ton of difficult options to choose from here. I may take a chance at the resurgence of Jake Wieneke, as crazy as it sounds at this point, and slide him in there as well. Of the upper-priced players, probably can't fit any of those guys into the lineup here. Maybe if I can, I'm looking to slide in, Reggie Bagleton or Stephen Dunbar or Keon Hatcher. That's probably kind of around that price that I'd be looking at there. On defense, we only have 4 to choose from here as well. We've got Montreal is the most expensive at $4,000. Calgary and BC both at $3,500, and then Hamilton at $3,000. How would you rank the defenses?
Well, I think that they're really expecting Montreal to get a lot of turnovers in this game because that's very expensive for the Montreal Alouettes, considering that the Calgary Stampeders are essentially a sack machine. However, sacks don't really count for a whole lot in fantasy, really, is what I found. And turnovers count for everything, essentially, for defenses. So it may make sense to pick up Montreal. However, $4,000, that's a lot if you're really needing to take maybe a more value option. I don't mind looking at maybe even a BC Lion or a Calgary Stampeder team. I like Calgary for $3,500, probably over BC, just because, again, BC is playing a team that doesn't allow really any sacks on their team and really does a good job of turnovers as well. So I like Montreal because of the turnover chances, but that's a pretty pricey bill if you're trying to make it work with maybe a more expensive quarterback or running back. So what are you thinking, Ryan?
It's tough. Like you said, I mean, I was leaning towards BC at first, and then I did remember Calgary doesn't give up a ton of sacks. I also think we could be in for a BC Calgary game like that one earlier this year that was 41-40, and then you're not getting any points for your defense allowing a minimal number of points against in that case. So I think Montreal Hamilton's the lower scoring game, so I'm inclined to potentially try to fit in a defense from those two I would take Montreal probably as the better option of the two if you can fit the price in your lineup. But Hamilton has had some good games over 10 fantasy points down the stretch as well. So I like either of those two. And then I would probably go Calgary for the turnover potential. And then, BC might be the last option, I think, here, just because Calgary's offensive line is so good.
And, if you're not like us and you don't have a conscience and you feel like cheating, you know what? In all honesty, I would rather spend $4,000 and get myself a better wide receiver. However, we're not allowed to play like that. So,
well, hey, our fantasy league for the season is over. So anything is fair game in the playoffs, I say.
Fair point. To anybody that's listening from the Turf District, I'm sorry, I'm about to violate some rules. So, nevertheless, I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to take a defense this week. I might spend some more money and, pick up a Nathan Rourke.
It is tempting. It is tempting. I was thinking of that as well. Yes, we did put a rule in place for the league during the regular season that you could not leave a roster spot empty. But the league is finished. We have a champion. So now we're playing for fun in the playoffs. So do whatever you find is best for your lineup, I'd say.
Hey, we just all have to pull off a little bit of a Bill Belichick. We're just bending the rules a little bit. Or Chris Jones for that matter. We're just getting a pre-practice roster set up for ourselves.
Quit deflating the footballs over there, Adam.
Nah, we don't do that. We just record other teams when they're not looking.
Great. Perfect. Well, let's get into our full playoff prediction brackets here to end it off, and that's powered by Betstamp. Betstamp is a free app that helps you find the best value for your online sports betting wagers by providing you comparisons of odds across a variety of different sports books, including the Betstamp recommended best odds, which we'll be using for our CFL picks against the spread here today, at least the round one picks. We don't have odds for the rest of the playoffs, of course, because we don't know what the games will be. You can learn more at betstamp.app and sign up with referral code CFC. I'll start pulling up the betting lines for the round one games here in a second. But let's start off with our straight up predictions. Who's going to win in the East semifinal and the West semifinal? And let's start off with the East. Who are you taking to win this game between Montreal and Hamilton?
I think this is going to be a very good game. I think that the crowd at Percival Molson Stadium is going to be very loud. I mean, Uncle Gary, as Trey lovingly calls him, goes and is going to have the crowd just absolutely going wild in Montreal. I really like the offense of the Montreal Alouettes. Again, you said it earlier, Jake Wenicky has had a pretty good game in the last few weeks. Can he get it going in the playoffs? It's a whole new year when it's playoffs, as far as I'm concerned. Eugene Lewis has been a very good part of this whole season. William Stanback, I still say, has some more to go to prove some, but I think he's a good player to do it. That being said, Montreal also has discipline issues, and I know, Richard, you brought it up in the chat earlier, telling us all about that, hey, did we factor in penalties? And yes, we do try to factor in penalty problems because that's a big part of the game if you're giving up a lot of big yardage. This being said, I just do not feel comfortable one bit this year with Dane Evans. He doesn't have the weapons like he had last year going into the playoffs. There is no Jalen Acklin this year for him to rely on. There's no Brandon Banks. There's a lot of players that are missing off of that Hamilton Tiger Cats team that used to go to the Grey Cup in the offensive side of the football. Defensive side, I think they could possibly do it. They still got Simone Lawrence. They still have a guy like Micah Johnson there. They've still got a very strong defense. Their offense, though, I think is going to be their weak point. I have a funny feeling that we're going to see some turnovers. Straight up, I'm going to Montreal Alouettes.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one, going Montreal here as well. I think it does come down to the turnovers, and I think Montreal is the safer play there. The discipline that can impact things a little bit as well. But I feel like we saw a game earlier in the season where Hamilton scored an entire touchdown drive off of defensive penalties by the Alouettes and still found a way to lose the game. Montreal put up 185 yards or so of penalties and still found a way to win. So I think they can overcome that more than Hamilton can overcome the turnovers that I expect to come from them. So I will lean towards Montreal straight up here as well. Mike also, so Trey and Mike did send in their picks. Mike also took Montreal, and so did Trey. So the team, all four of us leaning towards Montreal for straight up picks here. What about pick against the spread? Our best odds from Betstamp is +3.5 for Hamilton on TonyBet or -3 for Montreal on CoolBet. I'm going to take Montreal. I think the spread isn't far enough here. I think Montreal wins by at least a field goal in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't see a Rouge kickoff in this game as much as I'd love to see one because that'd be hilarious. But nevertheless, no, I could see Montreal winning this one by more than 3, at least by a field goal more. So to me, No, it's a game in Montreal. That's why it's a 3-point. It's pretty much a tie essentially in this for it. You always get a 3-point advantage because you're at home. So no, even on the spread, I'm going to go Montreal.
Trey also went with Montreal -3, which means congratulations, Trey. You officially have won the season totals here because I needed to go 5-0 and Trey needed to go 0-5 in the playoffs for me to catch him. Which, if we agree on the same game, can't happen. So there's a reason he's our resident betting expert, and he will go on to take the title regardless of what happens in the playoffs. I thought about going complete opposite of them to keep it interesting, but no. If we're doing this segment earnestly, I think Montreal is going to win this game. Mike was kind enough to send us exact score predictions for every game. He has Montreal beating Hamilton. What's that?
Bold man, very bold.
Yeah. We'll see how close he is. Mike would also take Montreal against or at -3 because he's taken them to win 21-13 over the Ticats. So I kind of agree with the score like that. A low-scoring game is what I expect between these two clubs.
Yeah, no, I expect a low-scoring game. I don't know about 21-13. I think it's going to be more of like a 4-point, 3-point kind of game. I don't know. I'm going to go 17-13 for the Montreal Alouettes.
Let's take a look at our second game here, the West Division semifinal. We've got Calgary in BC. We said almost every category was right on the fine line between these two teams. And how do you pick based on that? And I have been in turmoil because I have really impressed with both of these football clubs this season. We'll go straight up picks here. I'll go first because I made you go first on the last one. There's something about the Nathan Rourke factor that I just believe in it. I think that, since a lot of these positions are so close, he makes such an impact on a game, the morale of the team, the effectiveness of the play calling, that I think we're going to see a BC team similar to what we did earlier on in the season. And I think that's a type of game that benefits the Lions more than it does the Stampeders. So it'll be awfully, awfully close in this one. It's really tough, but I will take the BC Lions to go on to the West Division Finals here. What about you?
I'm looking at this one here, and I look at two teams that you're right. They're just identical, essentially. They have different coaches, they have different quarterbacks, they have different players, but yet they're built on the same kind of, built from the same yarn, essentially, because you look at a BC Lions team, they're probably a stronger running passing game. You look at a Calgary Stampeder team that's a better running team. You look at a better defensive line versus a better secondary. You look at a better return specialist versus maybe arguably a better kicker or punter. So to me, this game is so even. You're right. It's something about Nathan Rourke in this game that's going to really decide it. I think that Nathan Rourke has that aura around him, and I want to see it. I really, really do. I want to see Nathan Rourke go out there, just start crushing records or start breaking things, and just absolutely go and whip that BC Lions fan into a lather because I want to see them just get absolutely go crazy because their team is going on to the West final against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and Nathan Rourke is going to be driving the bus to Winnipeg. That's my opinion. The Lions will take this one. I don't know if they'll take it handedly, but they're going to take it.
Well, I hope Nathan Rourke driving the bus to Winnipeg isn't the same type of situation where Jake Dolagala and Jeremy O'Day had to drive to Winnipeg for the Banjo Bowl. I would hope
there is no food poisoning before the West final as well.
Yeah, exactly. Straight up picks. Mike took Calgary, and Trey, I believe, took Calgary as well. So evenly split down the middle, I guess. But in terms of our consensus picks, Mike is the odd man out. It's normally you, me, and Trey. So I guess we're going BC for a consensus pick on the Betstamp app. That's if we were picking straight up. We are picking against the spread here. Calgary is at +3 from CoolBet. BC -2.5 from TonyBet from the Betstamp best odds. Does that change your pick in the Calgary direction? Do you think it's close enough that you're taking Calgary +3, or what are you looking at?
No. You know what? When the games are this close, it's very hard to go and change your pick for the spread because I don't see Calgary beating the BC Lions. But if the Calgary wins, they're going to win by 3 or more. If BC wins, they're probably going to win by 3 or more. I don't see a single point being a difference in a game here unless something really strange happens. Nah, I'm going to stick with the BC Lions at -2.5. It's just not enough difference to make the change, I don't think. And for me, yeah, no, I just, like I say, I like the Nathan Rourke bit here. I like the receiving core of the BC Lions. I'm going to go with the BC Lions.
You know what? I like chaos, so I'm going with Calgary +3 here because they did have 2 of their 3 games this year were decided essentially by a point or less. One was 41-40. One game went to overtime there. And I really did think long and hard about taking the Stampeders to win this game, so I figure if I'm thinking that, it's that close, I think the final result could be that close. So I'll take Calgary at +3 here, I think, on CoolBet because it's going to be a real darn close football game. Trey is also taking Calgary +3, so he agrees with me on that one. And Mike did predict Calgary 31, BC 24. So I guess Mike is also taking Calgary at +3. You seem to be the odd man out on the spread here, Adam.
I just don't know about that one, Mike. I mean, to me, you've got a guy that should have been probably the MOP of the year with Nathan Rourke on one side of the football, and you're saying it's going to be more than 7 that they're going to beat him by? I don't know. I think that Nathan Rourke, I think, might just show up a little bit. Yeah, he didn't have a great game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense, but this is the Calgary Stampeders. They've been good over the last little bit, but we're also in BC Place Stadium. I don't know about that, Mike, but hey, hope you're right, maybe.
Okay, so those are our picks against the spread and our picks for round 1 of the playoffs. So then let's fill out the rest of our playoff brackets here, and we'll make sure to fill them out correctly, not draw the wrong lines. I don't know. Trey and I talked about this on Monday. I don't know if you saw the CFL's bracket graphic where they posted it once and they had the team on the bye in the wrong slot on there, and then they took it down, and then they posted it again with the same thing. So I don't know if that's been corrected yet, but we know how the playoff bracket works. Whichever team we took to win the West semifinal will go into play Winnipeg. Whoever wins the East semifinal will go into play Toronto. Let's start out West this time. You and I both had, I think, the BC Lions moving on to face Winnipeg. So BC going into Winnipeg, what do you think?
This is going to be a tough one for me because I think that Nathan Rourke again could come out and just be is the X factor in the BC Lions. To me, though, there's something also about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You got to go into IGF. It's going to be cold. The Bombers are 1 game away from going to a Grey Cup for the 3rd time. You can't tell me that crowd is not going to be pumped in IGF on the West final. I will probably, and it breaks my heart to do this because, I still got some green in my blood, but the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to use the Rough Riders home loom, and it's going to drive me absolutely insane because I think the Bombers are going to go to the Grey Cup.
Well, let's look at who the others have picked here as well before we get to my pick. So Trey had Calgary going on to face Winnipeg. Trey took Winnipeg to win this. One to go on to the Grey Cup as well. Mike had Calgary going into Winnipeg, and he had Calgary beating the Bombers here, 31-21 in Winnipeg. Mike's prediction there. So me, I have BC and Winnipeg like you did. My heart leans BC. My head leans Winnipeg. Which one do I go with here is the question. I want to take BC to go all the way based on the Nathan Rourke factor. I really, really do. And that's where my head has been at. My head and my heart have actually been at since about the midway point of the season is BC going to the Cup. But Winnipeg has played much better ball. They've cleaned up the defensive struggles a bit down the stretch here. They've had so much time to prepare. Bold take alert. we're going to see Willie Jefferson catch a goal line touchdown pass in this football game. Like they put him at wide receiver in the final week of the season. And I don't think that was an accident unless it was to just confuse them. BC going from playing in the dome out to what's expected to, I think, to be a cold day, a potentially snowy day here in Winnipeg. I think Mike O'Shea is going to have the boys ready to go. So I think I got to take the Bombers to beat the Lions, as much as I want to see Nathan Rourke take that cup this year so bad.
And I just wanted to add also, if Winnipeg does get the home room in Saskatchewan, you can't change the green LED lighting in the home locker room. I'm just saying. So maybe you don't want to win it. I'm just throwing it out there.
It still won't be the worst locker room a Winnipeg-based sports team has had to play a game in recently, with the Jets playing in the makeshift arena in Arizona.
I guess that makes the CFL even. I mean, that's that locker room. I mean, come on.
Okay, out east. You, me, and Trey all have Winnipeg going on to the Grey Cup. Out west, Mike has Calgary going to the Cup. Out east, we all took Montreal to beat Hamilton, so we all have Montreal in Toronto. I will go first on this one, and I think I'm going to take... Who am I going to take here? I'm going to take why did I agree to go first? I actually don't know on this one. I think I'm going to take the Toronto Argonauts. I think I'm going to take the Argos. I had the Argos preseason. I had Calgary, Toronto preseason as my predictions, if I remember correctly. And I believe they were going to represent the East all season. That defense, the big factor to me is that Toronto defense. The offense will find a way to get just enough done. And maybe even we'll see Andrew Harris make a triumphant return in the playoffs. He's going to come back now because he's got to prove he was actually deserving of that original All-Star nominee, right? So he's just been buying his time, he's fueled by the anger of that situation. No, I think the defense takes it for Toronto over Montreal. So I'll have the Argos go into the Cup here. What about you?
I was always told I'm supposed to pick an East team to go and jump on a bandwagon with because you're from Saskatchewan. You can't take a West team. How could you dare think about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? Well, I'm going to take an East Division team and cheer for them. I think that I really do like the running of Andrew Harris if he is back for the East East final. Andrew Harris is going to make a big difference in that game, no matter which team he faces. And if he's back, you've got what I think Saskatchewan lost in the last little bit with some of their draft picks, like Darius Bladek, that's on that offensive line for the Argonauts. That is very good. You've got a all-star in Curly Gittins Jr., or is he? I don't know. I think we should just bring in Rod Black for figuring out the all-star list. Just every person he could go and announce and then say, or is he? But anyways, nevertheless, I don't really care for the play of McLeod Bethel Thompson is the only consideration that I've got, but it takes a whole team to win a Grey Cup. And I think that the Toronto Argonauts are going to, and at the beginning of the year, I should say, I did have the Montreal Alouettes, but they were facing a different team, so I get a new pick. So I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts in this one here. And we'll see who I think on the Grey Cup.
Yes, we'll get to that here. So we're taking Toronto, and we've got Trey is also saying, I guess, Toronto. Seems a little undecided on that. Mike had Montreal. Toronto is taking Montreal to win 31-28. So Mike's got Montreal, Calgary in the Cup. I think the rest of us have Winnipeg, Toronto going to the Grey Cup here, which means it all comes down to this. Who are we taking to win the Grey Cup for 2022? We lost Adam here. Adam, are you there? I think I know what's happening here. Who are you taking to win the Grey Cup this year?
I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts. I know I'm going nuts because I bought a hat for the Toronto Argonauts, but you know what? I think they're going to win a Grey Cup this year because they've got a great running game. I think it beats Winnipeg's running game, and that would be just absolutely epic to see Andrew Harris face the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in a Grey Cup right now. So if he's back and he's healthy and ready to go, And if the Toronto defense can step up like they have for most of this season, with Wynton McManus playing a perfect game, Chris Edwards and all the defense of the Toronto Argonauts stepping up, they can beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. They've done it in the past. Last year, let's face it, who was the only team that beat Winnipeg last year in the regular season? The Toronto Argonauts. So to me, I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts to win the Grey Cup. And I'm sorry, Toronto, probably you won't because I absolutely picked you. But nevertheless, I'm going to go Argonauts.
Mike had Calgary and Montreal in the Grey Cup and is taking the Stampeders to win 35-31 over the Alouettes. Trey has Winnipeg and Toronto in the Cup, and he's taking the Bombers for the three-peat this season. Me, I can't do it. I can't do the three-peat here. I am going with the Toronto Argonauts just like you, Adam. It scares me that we've been in lockstep almost every step of the way this for the playoff bracket, because normally when that happens during the regular season, we got it wrong. So expect like Hamilton, Calgary to both win in round one, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, probably, right? No, for me, Toronto, Winnipeg. What happened last time we had a 15-3 football team go into the finals and be the clear favorite over a team that seems like more of an underdog? It was the Hamilton Tiger Cats at 15-3 when the Bombers came in and shocked them there. Now, they prepare very well as a football team, but something's got to give at some point. And I don't know. I can't take the three-peat because it's so rare. I just can't see it fully happening in a one-game thing. Anything can happen. Bombers Argos this season came down to a crazy missed field goal. I think it was on like the last play of the game or something by the Argos to give the Bombers the win. I'll say this Grey Cup game is the day that McLeod Bethel Thompson silences the critics. I have been a big supporter of MBT all season long. I've believed in him. I know a lot of people don't. I think he led the league in passing yards, if not top 2 or 3 this season. And he's had a very underrated year. And so I think they get it together in the playoffs. The defense does enough. MBT comes out with a strong game. I will pick the Argos to win the Grey Cup this year.
No, I agree with you. And the other thing you got to remember is the crowd noise will be a factor in Saskatchewan, especially if it's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers there. They will go absolutely crazy on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers if there's any amount of Saskatchewan fans there, which there will be. So to me, I think Winnipeg's going to have to deal with crowd noise like they do on Labor Day, which is at a Grey Cup instead of like the biggest game of the year, essentially, instead of just Labor Day. So let's say it's the revenge of the Riders. You're going to go and get all over the Blue Bombers, and the Argonauts are going to end up winning a Grey Cup.
That being said, with the Riders being out of it, a number of people are going to be selling their Grey Cup tickets. I'm guessing there's going to be a solid number of Bomber fans who bought tickets preseason because it's a 6-hour drive away, and you had to think your team was going to have a good shot at getting there again this year, or Bomber fans that have been scooping it up now. So I could see it being a crowd that actually is maybe in favor of Winnipeg if they get there.
Be weird to see green seats cheering on a Blue Bomber fans, but our Blue Bomber team, but it could happen. Saskatchewan fans are selling their seats and trying to get their money out of them. So it could be either way. It could be where half the crowd is cheering and half the crowd is booing the whole time, and nobody knows who they're cheering for in this game. But all we know is one thing: that game's going to be sold out. It's going to be loud in Saskatchewan no matter what happens, and it should be a fun Grey Cup.
Yeah, that being said, all the fans from all 8 other fan bases are going to be actively cheering against Winnipeg if they get there because they went off this train, basically.
We've heard enough of Bomber fans. We want no more.
I am a Bomber fan, and I agree. So, no, I love all CFL fans. I love the passion for the league, which came out quite a bit across the league this week with the All-Star stuff. I think that does it here for today. That's our playoff picks. So you and I have Toronto winning the Cup. Mike has Calgary, and Trey has Winnipeg winning the Cup this year. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what's coming up next here on the podcast. On Monday, November 7th at 9 p.m., we will be here to recap the division semifinals. So the 2 games from this weekend, we'll know who's going into Winnipeg. We'll know who's going into Toronto. That's 9 p.m. Central time, which I think is central for both of us, Adam. There's a time change this weekend, if I'm correct. So we kind of realign on the time zone point there. So that's this Monday night at 9 p.m. And then next Thursday, November 10th at 9 p.m., we'll be here. That's Central Time again. We'll be here to preview the division final games. We'll do the same matchup breakdown as we did, and probably talk about whatever other chaos is going around the CFL that week. You can catch both of these shows and every show live over on YouTube at the Canadian Football Countdown, Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod, Twitter at CF Countdown Pod, Twitch.tv/CF Countdown Pod, and the Game Time TV YouTube page. All made possible by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV, which you can learn more about at GameTimeTV.ca. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us, as I mentioned, at CF Countdown Pod on Twitter and on Facebook. Make sure you check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well at CF Pod Network on Twitter. Adam, what else you got going on these days, and where can people find you if they want to hear more?
Well, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1. I mean, we're going to be talking probably a little more hockey than we usually do, especially this Saturday, because my home team gets to kick off their season this year. We're heading out to Manitoba to go take on and beat up some poor Manitoba team. I'm kidding. I don't know how they are, so it might be us getting to kicking. But nevertheless, you can see all about that over on at Adam Stewart 1. I'll be probably doing some of the game there. I might probably take a few pictures and post them up and all that good stuff. And of course, hey, some other big things happening this weekend. It's the Canadian Bowl this weekend. Regina and the Okanagan Sun are going to be playing in Mosaic Stadium. Should be a great game. I just wanted to bring that up for CJFL fans. And I hope you guys enjoy that game as well. Should be a very fun one out in Regina. We'll see if Regina can actually keep up the streak for Saskatchewan to win a few more of these Canadian Bowls. I'm sure Saskatoon has their name on it way too many times. I'm sure Regina would like to go and add a few of their own. So, make sure you follow me there, and also make sure you follow Trey. He couldn't make it here tonight because of just not feeling a little great. But Trey MB Harness, you can find all about horse racing and all the good stuff that Trey's doing. I'm thinking he's playing Modern Warfare too, probably just a little bit. So, we'll go with that. So,
yeah, you can find Mike on Twitter as well at Mike Garrell. You can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42 if you want to talk CFL, CFL Fantasy, NFL, reality TV, anything like that. Always enjoy chatting about topics like that. Cats, I like cats. I have a cat. If you want to chat about cats, we can talk about cats. What? Are you not a cat person, Adam?
Oh, I like my cats. I just have little mini dachshund. So, one of those little wiener dogs. And my poor mother decided she wanted to go and dress it up in a hot dog costume. So if you want to see that, that's over on my Instagram page. If you want to laugh at a poor little dog.
Oh, you got to send this to me afterwards. I don't have Instagram, so I can't see it, but send it to me. I want to see I want to see that. Follow the podcast. We got lots of fun things planned throughout the playoffs here. And as we get down to the wire, I cannot believe we're already here at the playoff time. And we'll roll into the season. We'll wrap up the season after the playoffs are over. And then to be determined what things look like over the start of the off season here. But nonetheless, it's been a great season thus far. The playoffs last year were fantastic. I bet they're going to be fantastic again this year. We appreciate everybody who follows along all year with us, whether you watch live, whether you watch after the fact, all the nice comments, fun comments along the way. Appreciate that. We appreciate if you do these fun things such as comment, like, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. Enjoy the playoffs, especially round one kicking off this weekend, everybody. And on behalf of Adam Stewart, I'm Ryan Coop saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.